In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Boom, and we're recording. Taylor, happy spring to you. How are you?
Good. I got the kids to watch Easter Parade. It was their first time. Florence really liked it. It's one of my favorite movies, so
I don't know that movie.
it's Judy Garland and Fred Astaire. It's lovely.
It's a classic. Got
11
it.
out of 10 recommend. So, yeah,
Very,
it's great.
very cool.
Mhm.
So yeah, we can go ahead and hop right in. That was a bunny reference. Thank you.
That was lovely. That
Thank
was really
you.
great. That's a
Thank
really great Easter. Thank you. Um, yeah, hi, welcome to Doomed to Fail. We bring you history's most notorious disasters and failures twice a week. I am Taylor, joined by Fars.
Yes, I'm here. I'm here all the time. This is me, Farce.
It is very springy. I can like hear birds outside. I see bunnies out my window like several times a day. It's like a bunny hopping by.
I wish it was spring all the time.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know what
kind of
the
lovely.
utility of the rest of the summer seasons are.
I agree. It's definitely nice. I liked on a crisp autumn, but like spring and it also goes by so fast. Like it was just my husband's birthday last week, and I remember when we lived in New York, his birthday was always freezing, and I always be like, it's mid-April, it has to be nice, and it would never be nice,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? But it's really nice here. We have some cactuses that bloom for like a day, and then then like the blooms like close up and become part of the cactus, and they're like bright pink. It's really pretty.
Are those prickly pears?
They're similar. I'm sure they're probably related in some way.
Okay, fun.
Yeah, yeah,
We're both blessed to live in very cacti-friendly environments, so
we are.
thank goodness for that.
Yeah,
Sweet, Taylor. Well, let's dive in. I think you're gonna start us off today.
I am. I have a one that ties a lot of the stuff we've been talking about over our million episodes together. So I'm going to reference four of our episodes and tell you about a plane crash.
Everything in one.
Yes, it is a it's a amuse bouche. That's not the right word. What's it called? Like a tasting menu
Is a
of
mouche bouche a real thing?
disasters. Yeah, and a amuse bouche is something that you eat between meals at a really fancy restaurant to cleanse your palate. So it's not an amuse bouche
Okay.
at all.
All right.
It's usually like it comes in like a little plate, and then like you eat it, and it's like, oh, my palate is cleansed,
It's like the
whatever that
ginger
means.
for sushi.
Yes, exactly,
Sweet.
exactly. Um, so I'm going to talk about Air New Zealand Flight 901. Does that ring any bells?
No.
Okay, good. So I wrote, not to be outdone in plane crashes. Let's talk about. Oh, also because I just bought myself tickets to go to Atlanta, so I'm psyching myself up because I have to go to Atlanta for 2 days for work. Um, so
Soon.
yeah, so
All right.
getting psyched for it. So Air New Zealand Flight 901 crashed on November 29th, 1979. But first, we have to talk about four things that we've talked about before. The Franklin expedition, which is episode 58. That is when they get lost in the Arctic. Volcanoes, which are 7 episodes in between episodes 38 and 71. They're in there. Antarctica, episode 158. You talked about how isolated Antarctica is and people who do their own surgery there because they can't get any help. And Mount Everest, which you talked about in episode 95.
Fun.
So all of that ties into this plane crash. So let's go back to 1845, and you'll remember the Franklin expedition.
Yep.
They set out from England to find that Northwest Passage, the two ships
Terror.
yeah, the Terror and the Erebus. Correct. Um, both those names are terrifying, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about. So they had tried to do this before, and they'd gotten stuck on the ice for 10 months, came back, went and did it again. This time, they did not make it. Everybody either starved or, died of sickness. There was scurvy. They froze to death. There's evidence that they decided to like leave and start walking away, carrying a lot of their things that they had, but there was like lead leaking through their cans, and they were getting sick from lead poisoning. Everybody was kind of going crazy, obviously, as you would. I don't know how you could not go crazy.
Right.
And there's some like mummified bodies of sailors that we've seen that from that expedition, but most of them are just gone. Eventually, in 2014 and 2016, the two ships were found, like their wreckage was found, but they were found 45 miles apart. So at some point, like they were together in the ice, and at some point, the ice melted enough for them to separate, and then they sank. By
Which
that time, everybody was dead.
which is probably related to continental drift, which is part of the volcano episodes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the volcano comes in here in a second. So all of that to say. The Terror was named because it was supposed to incite fear, which makes sense. It was used in the, I think, the War of 1812. It was used, I think it was at the, and the Terror is a ship that was in the bay in Baltimore when the guy wrote the Star Spangled Banner. Like, that ship has been everywhere. And the Erebus is its sister ship, and it was named after a Greek deity that represents darkness born from chaos. So, like, don't name your boat that.
I would. That's
It's
so cool.
it's very dark. And I feel like oh, actually, okay. So
I was
remember
playing
that.
Pantera on that thing.
That's fair. That's true. Like in Mad Max, where the guy's like playing the guitar on like that thing.
Yes. Yes,
That
exactly.
makes sense. I feel like instead of the mermaid, they have that guy just like strapped to the front of the Erebus. So the Erebus is part of that fleet. It gets lost and everyone dies. 4 years before that, in 1841, the same ship, the Erebus, was captained by a man named James Clark Ross. So different captains, same two boats together, but this time they're in Antarctica. So they're at the South Pole of the Earth, and they discover in Antarctica two volcanoes. They name the volcanoes the Erebus and the Terror after themselves. The Erebus was actively erupting when he named it that, and that actually kind of does make sense.
Yeah, yeah. That name actually is very fitting.
That is something to name an active volcano. Absolutely. And it's the same ship that named this volcano in Antarctica that ends up, you know, at the bottom of the ocean in the Arctic on the other side of the world, which is pretty crazy. Um, so the So now Mount Erebus is in Antarctica. It's kind of on the near the coast. It's obviously been there for, a long time. It is the southernmost active volcano on Earth. It is the second highest volcano in Antarctica. The other one is dormant. And it is a polygenetic stratovolcano. So, which means it has ice caves and active lava. So it's like a pretty intense mountain.
They should make a movie in there.
I know. It sounds wild. I was actually thinking of like Lenny Riefenstahl in a cave on a mountain making a movie because you're like, there are active ice cliffs here.
I was actually thinking about another episode that there was one that I covered where Superman's father, played by
Yes.
Martin Orlando, they should have done it in that cave
With the suitcase.
with the suitcase.
Yes. So it was first um, the island around the volcano was first mapped in 1912. It is close to Ross Island, which obviously that Captain Ross named after himself, and other Antarctic stations from like different countries around here. And I think we talked about this in your Antarctica episode, but like it's a terrible place to be. It's the coldest place on Earth. It's also a desert. So there's like no vegetation, there's no animals. Sometimes it's, light all the time, sometimes it's dark all the time. It's just like not a good place to be. You're there for like scientific exploration for like 6 months and then you leave and you have to come back later. It's like space.
Yeah, the thing I covered was catabolic winds, which are like these insanely powerful winds that prevent
Hmm.
anybody from actually getting to you once you're there.
Yes,
It's scary.
exactly. So it's scary. So that's what we have. So now we have an active volcano in Antarctica named the Erebus, named after the boat that we knew about from the other thing, which is an interesting connection.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's talk about Mount Everest. So you talked about people who died climbing Mount Everest and like some bodies that were left
Well,
up there.
yeah, I think I covered. I mean, this we've done a lot of this, so
I
going
know
back in the
there's so
memory banks
much.
here, I think it was all the different corpses that are visible there.
Yes, yes, yes. So you mentioned in that episode that some people, like George Mallory and Andrew Irvine, tried to get to the top before, and I think one of them, their bodies had something that like they didn't have a letter that they were going to leave at the top, which makes you think that they did actually make it. Is
Yep.
that right?
Yep.
So So, we think other people may have done it before, but the first person to actually do it that came back is Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, who was his Sherpa guide from Nepal. So, Sir Edmund Hillary, we talked about a little bit in your episode. He was from New Zealand, which was part of the UK. Just a little bit of stuff on New Zealand that I didn't like super fast New Zealand information. In 1840, it was a British colony. In 1907, it had its own dominion, so it could self-govern, but the British Empire was still head of state. And then in 1947, there was a Statute of Westminster, which gave New Zealand full legislative independence from Britain. It could make its own laws. And then in 1986 was a Constitution Act where it has its own constitutional independence. But that means the Queen is also, instead of them kind of like reporting to the Queen of England, they just changed her title to Queen of New Zealand when she's there, essentially. So King Charles is King of England plus 14 other things, including New Zealand.
I mean, it sounds like a lot, but I assume it's just all ceremonial.
Yeah. So that's just what New Zealand's up to. Anyway, Edmund Hillary was born on July 20th, 1919. He was 6 feet 6 inches tall, and he looked like it. He looks huge, very skinny. He was a beekeeper and an avid like mountain climber. And then he joined the war in World War II in the Pacific Theater. But religiously, he was a pacifist and he didn't want to join, but he ended up joining after he felt like he had to. In 1953, he climbed Mount Everest, and it was the Queen's coronation day. Do you remember that? And how exciting that was?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I remember
You
that
mentioned
all
that.
the time. I think about it constantly.
I feel like you talked about it, I thought. That's why I mentioned
I
it.
probably saw it somewhere in passing. I'm sure.
Um, anyway, that was exciting for the Empire that he had done that, and he was like from there, and he was knighted shortly after, which is why he's Sir Edmund Hillary. So he kept climbing after this. He also did a lot of humanitarian work. He helped build schools and bridges and hospitals in Nepal, airstrips to make it a little bit safer to fly in and out of Nepal. He wanted to help the Sherpas who had helped him. He,
Have you seen pictures of the airstrip he helped build?
I think so. They're really insane, right?
It is. s- It's so much worse than just dying. I would just tell the pilot to just fly the thing straight into the fucking side of the mountain because it is
Yeah, I know we talked about
terrifying
this.
trying to land on that thing.
That's like part of the most dangerous part of doing that is that.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
I
like
mean,
how
well,
you need to
God
get
bless him for
there.
having done it. Like, I mean, he
Yeah,
did
yeah, yeah.
something, but still,
Yeah,
it is a horribly terrifying experience.
exactly. So he does a lot of humanitarian work and he also does stuff in Antarctica. So he s- led the New Zealand section of the Commonwealth Trans-Antarctic Expedition in 1957. So he was one of the first people to reach the South Pole by car. He drove there. Um, he was the first person to stand at both the North and South Poles and the top of Mount Everest. And I can't feel like that can't be a long list.
Yeah. Very, very accomplished, clearly.
Yeah. Um, And so in 1975, he was married to a woman named Louise, and they had 3 children. And then in 1975, when his wife and his daughter Belinda were visiting him in Nepal, their plane did crash shortly after takeoff in Nepal, and they both died. So he was left with his 2 boys, who I think is a girl and a boy, and they're still alive. His kids are still alive today. But he was obviously super devastated about this, and like spent some time alone, and then went back to his like humanitarian work after his wife had passed. Um, so it's the 1970s, and now we know that. So we know that Sir Edmund Hillary is doing stuff in New Zealand and Antarctica and all of that. He's getting older. He exists. So now I'm going to start the story of New Zealand and New Zealand Flight 901, knowing all the stuff that we know.
Sweet. That was a hell of a setup.
Yep. So in 1979 and before this, there was a trip you could take with Air New Zealand that honestly sounds awesome. So it's a sightseeing flight. You leave Auckland and you go to Antarctica. You go down by Ross Island, which was named by our Captain Ross, and you stop and refuel, and then you fly around the part of the Antarctic. It is a 10 to 12 hour flight, and on the flight, it's open bar, there's lots of meals, they play movies that are related to exploration, and it's at about 15% under capacity. So there's space to walk around and look around. So maybe like you and your friend share a 3-person row, but there's never a third person. You just like walk around, eat, drink, have a great time, look at the snow out the window, but you're warm and cozy inside this plane. And it has an expert that tells you what you're looking at. And guess who that expert was for a lot of the flights?
Tenzing Norgay.
No, it was Sir Edmund Hillary
Yeah,
himself.
right, right. I don't know why I said. Sorry, people like
Could have been, Tenzin could have done it too. But Sir Edmund Hillary would be on there, which would be, how cool would that be? To be on a plane looking at the Antarctic and having Edmund Hillary tell you about it.
this does sound incredible.
I think it sounds really fun. But on this day, November 29th, 1979, Sir Edmund Hillary couldn't make it. He had other obligations,
Wait, so it
and
was
so
really him? It wasn't like an audio recording or
no, he was
something?
really him as a human. He was there, and he would like tell you what was going on.
That's so great. That
Is
is
that
10
cool?
times cooler than what I thought it was.
Yeah. No, he was like literally there. You could like ask him questions, and he would show you, and he like knew what you were flying over, and he would talk about all of his adventures. And I mean, that
Wow.
sounds awesome. Um, so he couldn't make it that day, so he asked his friend Peter Mulgrew to do it instead. So Peter was born on November 21st, 1927 in New Zealand. He was in the Royal New Zealand Navy for 11 years, including being active in the Korean War. He joined a Himalayan expedition in 1960, where he suffered severe frostbite and lost both of his feet. But he kept climbing. And he kept doing adventurous stuff. And he climbed the Matterhorn later. He was a sailor. He sailed around Cape Horn in 1973. So he's very qualified and like very brave, obviously, because he like had his feet amputated. Um, Peter's married to a woman named June, and they have two children. So he says, oh, he also was on boards with Sir Edmund Hillary. They worked together for like the humanitarian stuff as well. So they're really good friends. And he says, okay, I got this. Like he's like, it's been like 4 years since Sir Edmund Hillary's wife and daughter died. So I feel like it just hasn't been that long since that. And he's like, I'll go and I'll do this trip for you. So Peter Mulgrew um, is the expert on this flight. And because it's November, the end of November, a lot of the people who are on the flight are there because it's their Christmas gift from their family. Like, we saved up money for you to go on this trip. A lot of like older couples. The pilots are there. The pilots had never done this flight before, but they were very qualified pilots. The captain was Jim Collins. He was 45. The first officer, Greg Casson, was in his 30s. There were two flight engineers. There was a first officer. So there were a lot of people on the flight that could very successfully fly an airplane. Um, that day, there were 257 people on board, 237 passengers, and 20 crew members. So, a lot of people. It was also a McDonnell Douglas DC-10, and you'll remember that things don't go great with those a couple times.
That's the TriStar, right?
I'm not sure. I know that it's the one where I can't remember we talked about it, but where like the cargo door didn't close all the way in some cases, and that caused crashes.
Yeah, I can see how that would work. I
Yeah.
think it is. I think it's the one that has the three things.
Oh, yeah, yeah, maybe. Um, so the flight boards at 8:30 a.m. and the first 4 hours are fine. Around noon, there was regular communication, and around 12:49, communication ceased, and they never heard from the plane again. So here's the part that is so crazy that I will have, don't look it up now, but look it up later. I don't know if you've been Googling this while I've been talking,
No.
but there is actual video from on board the plane of the crash itself. It is about a minute long. It was found in the wreckage. So it's also helped verify the video because people recognized their family members on the video. So it's a minute, it's very clearly on like a 70s style like recorder that you're holding. And there are people walking around with cocktails and talking to each other and laughing and looking out the window and taking pictures and eating. And you can see what it would be like to like be on the sightseeing plane. They're walking around and looking at it. And then the camera turns and looks out the window and you're looking, you can see the outline of the window and you're looking at like the snow and ice. And then all of a sudden you just see orange engulf the window and then it's over. So it was like the actual plane crash moment.
Jeez. Well, so it was I guess the thing blew up or
I'll tell you what happened.
okay.
So it happened very, very fast because you can see like someone's like out the window, you know, taking this thing, and then all of a sudden, orange. So by 9 p.m., New Zealand was finally like, it's lost. Like we need to send out a search party. At midnight, a U.S. team that was joining the search saw the wreckage around Mount Erebus. And I was like, wow, how could they have seen that? But it was always daytime at this time of the year. So that's how they were able to like do search at midnight. So they ended up doing is sending people, like you said, to like go out and camp and like find the wreckage and go through it and find and identify the bodies and do all of that. But that was also really, really hard because of the wind, because of like the weather there. It was freezing. And so they did their best, but the wreckage of the flight is actually still there in Antarctica. And here's what happened. So the night before the flight, the coordinates of the path were changed slightly by 2 degrees longitude, in that the crew was not informed. And then 14 months before this, the flight path had been digitized, and when it was digitized, there was another change in like the latitude was changed from 164 to 166 in one place. So I'm not like a map person, but that little change was like kind of annoying. And another pilot had complained and reported it, but they didn't do anything about it. So like that little change kind of made the path like a little bit harder to navigate, but they were like, don't worry about it. No big deal. But then that change combined with the 2 degree change that they had made the night before and not told them about put them on a wildly different path. So the pilots thought that they were flying down the McMurdo Sound, which is a clear path over the snow and ice where you can go and like do this sightseeing trip. And they descended about 2,000 feet to get a better look for the passengers, which they had never done before because they had never flown this route. But like all the flights that they had done in the past, they had done that. Like it was not new. The pilots would lower the flights so that you could see better. But what they didn't know is they were not at all where they thought they were. They were actually headed straight towards Mount Erebus, and they couldn't see it because it was in total whiteout. So it was like white sky, white ground, white mountain. They couldn't see it.
Wait,
And
they
they thought they
flew
were
into
on,
the mountain?
they flew into the mountain and exploded. Like they flew
Wow.
into the side of the mountain, just like the one that you talked about last week.
Wow.
And it would have been a total surprise because they literally just did not see it. Like you couldn't tell where the horizon was. Like you couldn't tell where anything was because it was just totally white. So it's called sector whiteout, which makes it like impossible to tell where the train is and where it isn't. Everyone died, obviously. Like, you know, everyone on the plane died. Air New Zealand blamed the pilots immediately. They said it's their fault. They're the ones who did this. And the pilots' families and people were like, they wouldn't like that doesn't make any sense. Like they were very accomplished pilots. They were following the flight path. They ended up getting, you know, finally getting like the data back, and they did it at like one a couple seconds before the crash. They got a warning, um, and it was like at 12:49. They got a warning that was like pull up, pull up, pull up, and the flight engineer said we're at 500 feet, and they're like pull up, and then that was it. So it was like half a second warning that they ended up getting from their like equipment anyway. So they just like didn't know that they're flying into it. Um, they they basically they did fly low. Basically, they thought they were somewhere else. So finally, there was an inquest in 1980, and Judge Peter Mahone in New Zealand blamed Air New Zealand for it and the government. He said the investigation he said litany twice. There was a litany of administrative blunders and an orchestrated litany of lies. People were just trying to like cover it up and blame the pilots, but it wasn't the pilots' fault. Um, the DC-10 plane is the same plane that crashed in Chicago and then like in Turkey as well. So it's like a plane that like was not, I think it might have been the Tenerife plane as well. Might have been a DC-10.
Could have been. I
And
know that one of them was a 747. The one that actually started the whole problem was a KLM 747 because he took off
oh
without
yeah.
ground
Yeah,
clearance.
yeah. Yeah. Um, but finally, in 30 years later, New Zealand they apologized for the disaster, saying that that they should have done like a better job of taking care of it afterwards, of all those things. Um, that was he apologized to everyone affected, and then the same judge, Mahone, he awarded a memorial medal to the pilots just like for their like it wasn't their fault. They did all of those things. And then the like I said, the wreckage is still there. They left all of it there because like the one in the Andes, like you just can't go and get it. Like a lot of it is still there. Some of the bodies were never identified. Some of them were. And then many years later, um, how many years later? So I think 10 years later, in 1989, Sir Edmund Hillary married Peter Mulgrew's widow, June,
I
and they
mean,
spent the rest of their lives together.
kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
She definitely
And
has a
they
type.
I know. And they continue to do humanitarian work around Nepal and to help the people who live in like those towns at the bottom of those big mountains. And they were together until they both passed away. June um, passed away last year in 2024.
No way.
Hmm.
Isn't it crazy how recent all this stuff was?
Yeah.
Like we just discovered, and I guess when did he do it? Like 1950s is when he summited
Yeah.
Everest.
I think I remember when we talked about this before, like I always pictured that happening like 100 years
I
before that.
I know when you said 1919 when he was born, I was like, I think you mean like 1719.
No, I know. He feels much like a much older thing, but no, he's like pretty new. Pretty new. But yeah, isn't that crazy?
That is pretty crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a, you know what? It's a shame because that flight does sound really, really cool.
Doesn't it? I think it sounds super cool. Okay, did you find the video?
No.
Let me send it to you. It's like, oh, that's a commercial. It is it's less than a minute. Obviously, I'll put it in our show notes for everyone, but um, it looks really pretty. You can see that I'll narrate it. They're looking at
Yes.
the ocean. They're drinking cocktails. Everyone's got cool sunglasses on.
That
There's
looks
like this
so
guy looks like my
fun.
grandpa. There's this lady that has cool
Oh, she
70s
looks so
haircut.
cool.
I know. They got these cool cameras. And then they look, oh, look, it's so pretty. I can see these mountains. Look, it's pretty mountains. I can see the wing of the plane. Oh, orange. That was at 49.50.
That is freaky. Well, the one good thing I would say is if you're gonna go, like at least you did something that was really fun, really cool, and it was a lasting member and it was immediate.
Yeah, exactly.
So, wow, way to dovetail a bunch of different stuff into one.
I know. Isn't that fun? I feel like we learned a bunch of cool stuff and I could have not known like the where the word Erebus came from, but now we know. And that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Um, well, I bet Edmund Hillary was like, man, thank God I didn't take that one.
I bet he
I,
felt terrible. Oh my God,
I know,
poor
I know.
guy.
Actually, everything I've read
You
about him,
know,
he sounds like he's actually a really good person, and he probably did feel
he
real
does.
bad.
He seems really nice. Um, I was reading his Wikipedia page and someone was saying after he climbed Mount Everest, he looked like a happy walking skeleton because he was just like so tall, but like skinny from all of the working out and like climbing the mountain and just like he was having fun. Yeah, he seems very nice.
Very, very fun. Thanks for sharing yet another
Hmm.
plane disaster, which I never knew happened. For some reason, the fact that it was a just a fun little tourism thing makes it seem even scarier. I don't know why.
I don't know. I feel like but I also feel like well, a couple things. I never thought about being on a plane to sightsee. That sounds kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I would totally do that.
Yeah.
You do what? I mean, there's times when I get my car and just drive because I'm like, I don't know, I just want to drive. I just want to like drive around
Yeah.
and see what's going on in this neighborhood or whatever. So like, why would you go with
Hmm.
the plane if you have one?
Yeah.
So
I also
sweet.
feel like I don't really understand where Antarctica is. I want to do Antarctica to Auckland. If I want to look at that on a map.
Yeah, when you said that, I was like, I don't know my geography well enough to understand this.
Okay, I see Auckland. Let's switch these. Auckland, then I want to do Mount Erebus. Well, I don't want directions. Google Maps. When I see I can ride my bike, I just want to see how far away it is. Oh yeah, so it's like very, very close. It's like you don't go over Antarctica. You're kind of like right where you first get there, you know?
Right. Yeah, because why would you want
Um,
to go over it?
right, you can't really. Yeah.
Yeah, the landmass is huge. And I'm looking at this on a map. It's like at least half the size of South America.
I know, look how big. Wait, okay. I'm asking so many stupid questions. What is the land of Antarctica size? 5.275 million square miles.
Yeah, sounds big.
The world's highest, driest, windiest, coldest, and iciest continent. Continent sizes. Yeah. Oh, I guess it says the United States could fit on it. It says.
It would fit in it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, it like United States and Australia almost in Europe almost all fit exactly inside of it.
Okay, well, that's still huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
Um, yeah, so imagine all the stuff that we haven't discovered in Antarctica because we can't get in the middle of it.
I know. I was talking to my nail lady. What were we talking about? I forget what we were talking about. She was like, "You know what I hate? Whenever on the news, they're like, oh, I got this like parasite that drilled out of a hole in the Arctic,' and she's like, put that back." And I'm like, "You're totally right."
I need to watch what was the name of it? The body snatch movie. What was that? They found the dead thing in Antarctica. They thought it, and then like everybody was infected.
So many. It happens so many
Um,
times.
Sweet. Well, thank you for sharing, Taylor. Very, very fun.
You're welcome.
Do you have any fun listener mail to read us off with?
I have a good amount of suggestions that have been coming in. I got one from Morgan. I got a couple from Kara. I got one from Lindsay. I got an email from Justin. So, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, please keep writing
I
and
got a lot
write
of cool
to us
ideas.
at doomnflpod@gmail.com and find us on the socials at doomnflpod.
Yeah, Patreon, every social place, and yeah, that's where we'll be.
Sweet. Anything else?
Okay, thank
We'll
you.
go ahead and sign off.